Okay, so today we're learning how to solve quadratic equations with a new method called completing the square. Basically what it is I create a perfect square binomial, and then that makes it so I can solve the equation with square roots. So in order to complete this square, I have to take my b value, so this is a and b, and then I divide my b value by 2. So 6 divided by 2 is 3. So what I do is I'm going to add this number squared because it's called completing the square. So I do 3 squared, which is 9. And I'm going to add that to my expression. So I have, what am I writing? X squared plus 6x plus 9. And now I want to be able to factor this. What multiplies to 9 that adds to 6? 3. So then what I have to do is I just write x plus 3 squared. Notice, this 3 is the same number I got earlier. Okay, so then I want to do the same thing for number 2. I have to figure out my b value. It's negative 9. So I am actually going to leave this as a fraction. Negative 9 over 2. So negative 9 over 2 squared is, what's negative 9 squared? 2 squared? 4. Okay, so then I'm going to go ahead and add that to the end of my equation. What multiplies to 81 over 4 and adds to negative 9? Yeah? There's no 5. Yeah. Oh, you got one? So what multiplies to 81 over 4 and adds to 9? Look at number 1 for ideas. No. So this 3 came from the number that I squared. So what number will it be inside the parentheses with the x? 9 over 2. Negative 9 over 2. I keep the sign. Questions on number 2? Okay, so that was just practice on finding the square. Numbers 3 and 4, I'm actually solving by completing this square. So what I'm going to do is I start off like before, I label a and b. So my b is negative 16 and I want to divide by 2. Negative 16 divided by 2 is negative 8. So then I want to figure out what negative 8 squared is. Negative 8 squared is 64. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add 64 to both sides. Because what I add to one side, I have to do to both. So I'm going to have... What? Do you understand where the 64 came from? Okay. So I'm going to add it to both sides of the equation now. So I'm not actually... I'm keeping it balanced. I'm not changing anything. Yeah? Because completing this... Because Remember when I went back to wanting to factor it, I had to look for what multiplied to the end number and add it to the middle, because that's two of the same thing. That's why I divided by 2. Okay? So now I'm going to have x squared minus 16x, and then it's going to be plus 64 on the left equals negative 15 plus 64 on the right. Because I had to add to both sides. Bless you. So what do I want to do next? How would I go about solving this problem? Any ideas? All my exponents are on one side. That's not an exponent. What I actually want to do is I want to combine like terms on the right side. So what's 64 plus negative 15? $49. Okay. I am sorry, I did not do this enough for you. So then I'm going to go and factor this side. What multiplies to 64 and adds to negative 16? Negative 8. So I'm going to have x minus 8 squared equals 49. And now this kind of looks like something we were doing yesterday, right? So now what do I want to do? Subtract what? I don't have 64 anymore. You're the one sitting in the back of the room. Yeah? Not yet, you're a step early. I have to get rid of my exponent, so I take the square root on both sides. So then I get x minus 8 equals square root of 49. Just 7? No. What did we keep writing in front of everything yesterday? No. If it's a perfect square, I don't have to... Yeah, plus and minus 7. Now is when I want to split into two equations. So I'm going to have x minus 8 equals 7, and x minus 8 equals negative 7. Again, I apologize for not giving us enough room. I think I was really trying to make this fit on one page. Okay, so on my first equation, I add 8 to both sides, and I'll just write my answer here. I get x equals 15. Put the phone on the floor so it stops working, that's fine. And then on the second one, I add 8 to both sides, and I get x equals 1. Questions there. So I'm going to do the same thing for number 4. Do you guys still need time to write number 3 or no? Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing for number 4. I'm going to find half of negative 2, which is negative 1. Negative 1 squared is one. Then I'm going to add 1 to both sides. So I have x squared minus 2x, and then plus 1 equals 3 plus 1. So then I'm going to write the left side all over again. What's 3 plus 1? Then I want to factor the left side, so what multiplies to 1 and adds to negative 2. Negative 1 and negative 1. So I have x minus 1 squared equals 4. Alright, then what do I want to do next? I want to take the square root to get rid of the exponent. So then I get x minus 1 equals plus or minus, what's the square root of 4? 2. Then from here I'm going to split it into my two equations. So I'm going to have x minus 1 equals 2 and x minus 1 equals negative 2. Okay, then I want to add 1 to both sides. I get x equals 3. And then on the second one I add 1 to both sides and I get x equals negative 1. Questions on number 4. I did not want to move it. Okay, so moving on to number 5, guys. Okay, moving on to number 5. Notice how I have a number out front? What I want to do is I'm going to divide everything by 2 because everything is even. So it's going to make my numbers a lot smaller to deal with if I divide everything by 2. Thank you. So then 2x squared divided by 2 is just x squared. 20 divided by 2 is 20 divided by 2. 10. 8 divided by 2. 4. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to find, no, I'm going to add 4 to both sides. I am sorry, I did not give you enough. Huh? Time does Chick-fil-A stop serving breakfast? Oh. Okay, so then I want to figure out half of 10, which is 5. 5 squared is 25. So then I'm going to add 25 to both sides. I get x squared plus 10x, and it's really 9, plus 25 equals 4 plus 25. Okay, so then I get, I'm going to factor the left side the same time I add the right side, so I get x plus 5 squared on the left side equals 29. Then I'm going to square root both sides. I get x plus 5 equals plus or minus the square root of 29. 29 is prime, so I cannot do the factor tree on this one. And then I need to subtract 5 on both sides. I'm going to rewrite this down here. So then I get x equals negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 29. Because 29 is prime, I cannot simplify this. This is an irrational expression, and that's as far as I can go. Yes. I factored what multiplied to 25 and added to 10. Any other questions? Same thing on number 6. Everything can be divided by 3. So I'm going to divide them all by 3. And I get g squared minus 8g plus 9 equals 0. Then I want to then I want to subtract 9 on both sides. So then I have g squared minus 8g equals negative 9. Then I'm going to find half of negative 8, which is negative 4. Negative 4 squared is 16. Okay, then I'm going to add 16 to both sides. Okay. Then I'm just going to continue down. I have g squared minus 8g plus 16. Negative 9 plus 16 is 7. Then I want to factor the left side. What multiplies to 16? That adds up to negative 8. Negative, multiplies to 16, adds to negative 8. Negative 4. It's always this number. It will always be this number that I found. Okay. So then it's going to be g minus 4 squared equals 7. What do I want to do next? Take the square root of both sides. And I get g minus 4 equals plus or minus the square root of 7. And then I just need one more step to solve this. I add 4 to both sides. So I get g equals 4 plus or minus the square root of 7. Questions here? Depends. What's your second round? Yeah, you have four, so. It depends. What's your second round? Yeah, you have four. Okay. Can I move on? There's 2 more examples on the back. What do you have? B. Okay, I'm going to move on to the back then. So the last thing is I can rewrite quadratic equations. I can change them into vertex form. So same thing as before. I figure out my b value, which is 4. Then I divide by 2, which gives me 2. This part's the same. Then I need to figure out what 2 squared is. What's 2 squared? 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stay all on the right side of the equation. So I have x squared plus 4x. Then I'm going to add 4 and subtract 4 because it's the same thing as adding nothing, right? Because they cancel each other out. And then minus 1. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to break it up into 2 pieces. The first 3 things are going to be grouped together, and that's what I'm going to factor. The second 2 pieces I'm just going to add together. So what multiplies to 4 that adds to 2? I have this number on my paper. 2. So then I have x plus 2 squared for the stuff that I put inside parentheses, and then negative 4 minus 1 is negative 5. That's all I have to do here. Questions here? Kind of the same thing on number 8, except you notice how I have this negative out front? What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to rewrite it first. I'm going to have y equals negative, and then in parentheses x squared minus 2x, and then I leave the 7 alone. Okay, then I need to figure out half of negative 2, which is half of negative 2, negative 1. Negative 1 squared is positive 1. So what I'm going to do on this one is I'm going to do y equals negative, and since I have everything in parentheses already, I'm going to add the 1 inside the parentheses. Okay, but this one, because of the negative outside, actually makes this one a negative. So when I go to add my 1 on the outside, I add the positive 1, because I've already added the negative. Okay, then I just have to factor the inside. What multiplies to positive 1 and adds to negative 2. Negative 1. What's 1 plus 7? 8. And then I'm done. Questions here?